Social murder is a term coined by Friedrich Engels in 1845 and used to describe murder committed by the political and social elite where they knowingly permitted conditions to exist where the poorest and most vulnerable in society are deprived of the necessity of life and are placed in a position in which they cannot reasonably be expected to live and will inevitably meet an early and unnatural death. Social murder. What the government is doing at the moment. They say if you add one to the other, you will get something. And this will become apparent later on for those that don't know yet. But it's simply another distraction that they use, as you'll see in a bit. Iran to execute 8 Christians for leaving Islam. Media is silent to avoid damaging Islam's image. The Sharia regime in Iran cracks down on the Christian minority. Security officials from Iran's intelligence ministry raided the homes of 8 Iranians converts to Christianity on July 1st in the southern city of Bushehr, carting them off to solitary confinement under Iranian Sharia law. Leaving Islam or converting from Islam to Christianity is punishable by death. Christians in Iran are not allowed to practice their religion publicly. The persecuted Christian minority in Iran are forbidden from sharing their faith with non-Christians. Consequently, church services in Persian, Iran's national language, are not allowed. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the Assyrian community in Iran, totally approximately 200,000 people. However, since then, many have fled, and in 2015, only 32,000 Assyrians were left in the country, mostly in Tehran. Yellow Vest, history of Lille, in 67th week of protest in France. Tehran, Tasnim, France's Yellow Vest protest took to the streets of Lille on Saturday for the 67th consecutive Saturday of demonstrations against President Emmanuel Macron's policies. Several hundred people had begun marching in Paris on Saturday. Yellow Vest activists have called for protests in Paris and Lille today. Related gatherings are likely in Nantes, Marseille, Avignon, Lyon and Montpellier. Additional protests are possible in other urban centres across France. The Yellow Vest movement began on November 17, 2018, to protest rising fuel prices and planned fuel tax. It has since grown to encompass a number of popular grievances against the French government, just like we have against the British government. Some protests have turned violent and acts of vandalism and looting have been reported. That'll be by the agent provocateurs that the French government places in the crowd so they can say, look, these aren't just protesters, they're violent criminals. That's exactly what that is all about. Demonstrations have continued despite French government's proposals to address protesters' concerns. President Emmanuel Macron, traitor to humanity, announces a series of reforms on April 25th, including closing corporate tax loopholes, income tax cuts, linking pensions to inflation by 2020, and reforms to referendum process, among others. You see, we have the power if we stand up and use it. Furious French farmers confront Emmanuel Macron face-to-face as chaotic scenes erupt. Furious protesters confronted French President Emmanuel Macron over his controversial policy plans as chaos erupted at an annual agricultural fair in Paris. Emmanuel Macron was almost immediately challenged by angry protesters during his visit to the important international agricultural show in Paris this morning. Farmers confronted the embattled French leader face-to-face over his plan to push through controversial pension reforms. In response, he scolded the demonstrators for being extraordinarily aggressive during his tenure as president and told them to stop protesting. Yeah, stop sticking up for your rights, because we don't like that. If you stick up for your rights, we may have to do as you want rather than as we want. So stop it, right? As Emmanuel Macron's impact grows, so does French disdain. No recent president has had a deeper effect on France's economy, society and politics, and many French despise him for it. Paris. One after another, the speakers in Parliament have denounced President Emmanuel Macron and his revolutionary plans, calling them cynicism and a flagrant crime. Outside, hundreds of protesters shout their fury over demonstrators invoking a long French tradition have called for his head. And I think he's going to lose it, and deservedly so. But it's all theatre for now. The weeks of strikes that began in December and stretched into the new year against Mr Macron's plans to overhaul the French pension system have fizzled it, even if the anger has not. Mr Macron, the youthful investment banker turned politician, there you go, you know, if he's been a banker, he's a... it rhymes with banker. Nearly 3 years into his presidency, is poised to win his latest battle. His government is hoping that his plan to eliminate France's 42 different pension schemes and merge them into one will pass their lower house of parliament, where his party has a lock, by mid-March, and that it will be enshrined in law. Well, it's not law, it's statutes and acts, so don't fall for the bullshit they use with the words, by the summer. It would change France deeply, like the other programmes. The real question now for the president and his country is, at what cost or benefit to France, now and in the future? School where pupils walk to class in silence should be replicated across the UK, Education Secretary says. In other words, don't talk at all, because that way you don't spread to each other what's really going on. So just walk in silence and be good little slaves and get indoctrinated into the system, so us elite wankers can continue to abuse and get away with everything that we do. Sky News is reporting that schools with good disciplinary record should partner with those that are struggling to form behaviour hubs and replicate successful models across the UK, the Education Secretary has said. Gavin Williamson has said there is no reason why teachers should be physically or verbally assaulted by pupils in their classroom, and has called for strong discipline and traditional teaching values. Because the last thing they want is anyone standing up for themselves, especially kids who have been in the indoctrination system for anything from 15 years to even longer, and they're still rebelling because we're breaking down their indoctrination and everyone can see it for what it is. The behaviour hubs, or do as you're told hubs, would enable schools with exemplary behaviour to work with other schools that want to improve. The school would learn from each other, share good practice and equip other heads and senior leaders with the skills to improve their approach. In other words, how to indoctrinate the pupils into doing as they're told. Be good little slaves. That's right, you just sit there and say nothing. A survey last year by that union found that 89% of teachers said they had experienced physical or verbal abuse in the last 12 months. Well, perhaps if you didn't boss the kids around so much and treat them like kids, started giving them a bit more respect, you wouldn't get that sort of shit. Read full article, blah, 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 and that sort of there. London jury clears 3 former Barclays bankers of fraud charges. You see, even if you manage to prosecute them and get them to court, they stick a gatekeeper judge in which will say, well, after seeing all the evidence, and even though it proves that you did commit fraud, we're going to find you not guilty because we're all bought and paid for by the bank, so we're not going to find any bankers guilty of anything. Decision leaves senior fraud officers' case against banks' Qatar arrangements in tatters. The UK Serious Fraud Office has lost its high-profile 7-year case against Barclays bankers over delays they made with Qatar during the financial crisis after 3 former top executives were all cleared of fraud charges by a jury. Yeah. They were directed by the judge, I bet you anything. The 3 defendants, Roger Jenkins, Tom Calaris and Richard Both, were acquitted after 5-month retrial at London's Old Bailey. It was the first criminal trial to examine steps senior banks took during the financial crisis in the UK. Oh, and what a shock. The jury took just over 5 hours to acquit Mr Jenkins, who managed Barclays' relationships with Qatar, and the Gulf States Prime Minister, Mr Calaris, the American head of the banks, Wealth Unit in 2008 and Mr. Both, its investment banking unit, European co-head of financial institutions, the SFO, had alleged the three had lied to the market in official documents detailing two emergency cash calls in 2008, which helped the bank avoid a taxpayer bailout by raising 11.2 billion. The men denied wrongdoing because, we know that we bought and paid the judges anyway, and we're not going to get done. They stood in the dock with their heads bowed as the jury foreman read out the verdicts. They exchanged glances and smiled after the verdicts were delivered. You see, it's pointless in this current system prosecuting bankers because, as I said, the judges, and they said it was a trial. How do we know there weren't other bankers in there or it wasn't fixed? We don't, because in this sort of thing, they can bribe their way out of anything, because a banker can write a cheque for any amount he wants because it's not real. Universal credit benefit is causing psychological stress for recipients, studies suggest. In other words, it's real, but we can't say that because the government won't like the fact that it proves that they're causing stress for everyone. Universal credit is causing psychological stress for recipients of the benefit, a universal study has suggested. The study, conducted by the University of Liverpool and published in health journal The Lancet, analysed the data of 197,111 observations from 52,187 individuals of work age 16 to 64 in England, Wales and Scotland. The benefit payment system, first introduced in 2013, intended to simplify 6 different means-tested benefits payments by combining them in one monthly payment. So we were told, we were lied to. That's what they pretended it was, when in actual fact it was a way of screwing all the poor. But academics have suggested the changes for recipients may have brought mental health complications to claimants who are looking for work. This is how much your council tax will rise in Solihull this year. Borough's budget approved as parties clash over tackling climate change, inequality and investment in Shirley. Solihull's council tax bills will rise almost 4% from April, amid warnings that the borough had to be ready for pressures, risks and uncertainties. The 159 million budget was approved by the last night's full council with a financial plan which includes fresh cuts in spending totalling 1.8 million. How about we get rid of all the councils and we'll save billions there alone and actually give it to someone that actually wants to do the job and not because they're a fat cat licking the tray. Households will see their contribution to council services. No, it doesn't go towards council services. It goes towards their pensions and for them to invest in arms and other things. Rise by 3.9%, which will mean those in Band D properties pay out £1,411 in 2020-2021. The amounts to £52 more than in this financial year. While the lion's share of the annual bills is paid to the council, percepts are also applied by the police and fire service. The amount payable for each property band is as follows. Band 8, and that goes on to tell you, right, well, this is all utter bullshit because it's only commercial properties that should pay council tax. However, because you never challenged it and never said that you weren't a commercial property, they classed you as a commercial property, and therefore that's why they're robbing you, because only corporations should pay anything, including gas and electric. Italy blows the lid off vaccine scam. Will no longer poison citizens with globalist eugenics. Italian leaders actually care about the health and well-being of their citizens. Congratulations, Giulio Grillo, for standing up against the globalist agenda of maiming and destroying human life. Anti-vaccine Italian government sacks entire health expert board. See, the Italians know what they're doing. Italy sacked its vaccine scammers and put in their place 100% new people who are not part of the global conspiracy to destroy people with vaccines. There you've got it. The Italians can see it. Why can't the rest of our lot? And then subsequently and practically immediately discover that the vaccines have absolutely nothing they are advertised for, which begs the question, what the hell is really in those shots? Vaccine advocacy group Corvella, which is not compromised, spearheads Italy's investigation into the vaccine scam. The eugenicists are up in arms over Corvella, a vaccine advocacy group appointed by the Italian government to investigate the vaccines, which have now received over $50,000 in funding to test all the vaccines and see if they are scams and more. The eugenicists are upset about where the funding is coming from. Top Italian medical science teams are funding Corvella's efforts, unlike what this article implies in its headline and subsequently tries to state by claiming scientists are questioning the Italian government's actions, that the Italian government is off its rocker. That's not what the headline should be. Here is what the headline should be. 5 New World Order approved science scammers are protesting a vaccine safety investigation being conducted by Italy's real top scientists who are rapidly and easily uncovering the truth about what the current childhood vaccines really are. And they are not vaccines at all. They are something else entirely. As it turns out, all it takes to find out what is really in the vaccines is to break rank, seize a sample of what is being injected into the children, put it in a real lab that is not compromised by kikes, and voila. Suddenly, it is known that the vaccines are not at all what they are claimed to be. You can't do that in the United States. No parent is allowed to walk out of the door with a shot that has not been injected into their child. As usual, links in description if you want to read the rest of that. Very interesting article for those that are naysaying about the vaccine aren't really poison. All the evidence you have that they are. Insane facts for you all. Here is a good example of how it works. Evergreen Inc. is a CIA-owned company. That means it is subcontractor to subcontractor CIA of a subcontractor United States Inc. of a subcontractor E Pluribus Unum the United States of America Inc. of a subcontractor to the government of the United States Inc. of a subcontractor the Municipal Corporation of the District of Columbia of a subcontractor the United States of America Inc. of a subcontractor the Government of Scotland Inc. of a subcontractor Scotland Inc. a subcontractor of the franchise of the Bank of Scotland LLC, doing business as a subcontractor of HSBC PLC, doing business as a subcontractor of UK Inc., doing business as a subcontractor of Vatican City PLC, a subcontractor doing business of the Urban Trust PLC, doing business as a subcontractor of the UPU Inc., doing business as a subcontractor of Vatican City LLC, doing business as the Peace Trust Inc., doing business as a subcontractor of the City of Rome Inc., acting as a subcontractor of the Holy Family of the Inquisition Inc., doing business as a subcontractor of the Society of Holy Doctrine Inc., doing business as a subcontractor of the Holy See Inc., which is a subcontractor of Seed and Company Inc., and that is a subcontractor of the UN Corp., which is a subcontractor of Franciscus, which is a subcontractor of Francis I, which is a subcontractor of the Holy See. And now you have the bird's eye view of how interlocking interest in organisations work. And please bear in mind that at each step of subcontracting process, the accountability of each subcontractor diminishes relatively to the actual contract. And what have you got? You have Evergreen Inc., owned and operated by Evergreen LLC, which is owned and operated by Evergreen PLC. 4,500 employees, no obligation to file flight plans, hint, hint. And you have a totally unaccountable, self-interested, for-profit corporation abusing the powers of government. Evergreen makes money delivering contraband for the CIA by stabbing lucrative firefighting contracts and by spraying chemical trails, wastes, incendiary industrial waste that kill trees and create fodder for fire, and that leave explosive deposits of metallic elements and oxides layered over the landscape. See how this works? set up the fires as a profit and then make money firefighting too. Create the problem and get paid by the Vatican, and then solve the problem and get paid by the Vatican too. And there we sit, paying for it all. DWP, caught lying. It has tampered with thousands more benefit applications than it admitted. Remember when this site reported that the DWP had admitted tampering with thousands of benefit claims in order to deny the claimants the cash they were due? It turns out the DWP lied about the extent of its interference. It didn't just mess with 2,300 claims in 2019. The true figure, was 3,490, and in 2018 assessors marked down or rejected 3,360. That makes a total of 6,850 claims that the Department for Work and Pensions deliberately altered for no reason other than to deprive genuine benefit claimants of the money they genuinely deserved. This is murder by the state. Plain and simple, because the government have told them to do this. This is murder by the state. Billions of foreign aid disappears into tax havens. Billions of pounds of aid meant for the most dependent nations ends up in tax havens, a report by World Bank economist has concluded. A study, Elite Capture of Foreign Aid, tracked aid payments to 22 nations and found that as much as a sixth followed into havens such as Switzerland. The leakage was worst in the most dependent countries, where aid accounts for as much as 3% of GDP, according to the paper published on Tuesday. The World Bank, the largest multinational donor, issued a statement defending the research and its efforts to stamp out corruption. Nevertheless, the study, which was repeatedly delayed, will reignite the debate on Britain's commitment to that. China and India are richer than the UK, so why are we still sending them aid money? Boris Johnson is being urged to overhaul Britain's £14.6 billion foreign aid programme after it emerged tens of millions were being pumped into the massive economies of China and India, which are both wealthy enough to run their own nuclear and space operations. And with that 14.6 billion, if we stop that immediately, that would easily clear the streets of people that are homeless and food banks, because we could make it go to the right places. But of course, that's not the plan. That's not what they want. They don't want a happy men, women and children. They want us poor and in fear so they can keep us under control. That's why nothing will change as long as we've got these criminals in Parliament. Both China and India boast economies significantly bigger than Britain, causing many to question why UK taxpayers' money is sent to the government in Beijing and New Delhi. China is the second most powerful financial nation on the planet, with an economy which is an economy almost 4 times bigger than the UK economy. Beijing's military spending is also almost 4 times higher than Britain's defence budget. The Lancaster professor, whose work has put 30 serious child abusers behind bars. Child abuse is so immense in terms of its volume, the police can't arrest their way out of the problem. They need technology to arrest them. More child abusers could be put behind bars thanks to a revolutionary new programme run by Lancashire professor. Except, of course, when they get prosecuted, they go before a paedophile judge who lets them off with a suspended sentence or community service, because they're all doing the same thing. That's how this shit system has kept going, because they're all raping children, and so that way they make sure that they get the slowest and lowest rates of punishment, because they know one day it could be them there. The only difference is when that day comes, it won't be them there, it'll be us there, and we will give them exactly what they deserve. For the past 14 years, forensic anthropologist Professor Dame Sue Black has used her research hand identification to identify suspected paedophiles and rapists. The professor's research suggests that hands are more unique than DNA, helping prosecutors to match the hands seen in sexual abuse images with offenders. This has led to 30 life sentences for child abusers, including Britain's worst paedophile, Richard Huckle. Now Professor Dane Black is leading H-Unique, a hand identification research program which will help with the sentencing of thousands more sexual offenders. That'll probably get blocked then by the government. Medication without harm. Is it possible? The Clinical Services Journal technical editor Kate Woodhead, RGM DMS, examines how the World Health Organization Global Patient Safety Challenge aims to reduce medication errors. Medication errors are those which may lead to inappropriate medication use or patient harm. A report investigating the prevalence and economic burden of medication errors estimates that there are 237 million events in England annually. 237 million just in England alone. 66 million of those are potentially clinically significant. This is the little evidence on how medication errors lead to patient harm. The researchers had to use estimates from studies which identifies harm from adverse drug reactions, ADRs. The NHS cost of definitely avoidable ADRs are 98 million per year, with 181,626 bed days implicated, causing 712 deaths and contributing to a further 1,708 deaths. All part of the depopulation plan. If you want to read the rest, you know where it is. How smart are electronic skin patches? James Haywood, principal analyst at ID Tech X, highlights the dangers of a closed market driven by regulations and reimbursement strategies which favour devices for simplicity and cost rather than effectiveness, deterring new entrants. Research into small electronic patches have revealed significant opportunities, with more than $7.5 billion in revenue made from the technology in 2018, a growth forecast of $20 billion per year over the next decade. However, it also shows that reimbursement and regulatory consideration aren't necessarily keeping pace. Since 1999, ID TechX has provided independent market research, business intelligence and events on emerging technology to clients in over 80 countries. The organisation's recent report, Electronic Skin Patches 2019-2029, suggests that the market segment for electric skin patches is set for significant growth over the coming years, or the mark of the beast is another way of looking at it. Electronic skin patches are wearable products attached to the skin or a user incorporating sensor, actuators, processors and communication technology, allowing the device to connect to the internet to become smart. That is seriously bad. The People, knockout exclusive, BAJ then quit, Tyson. Wife begs Fury to stop over fears he'll get badly hurt. She nearly left him over drugs and booze. Millionaire loves rummage at rubbish tips. Waste of paper. £10 off Iceland when you spend 40. That's about the only thing worth it in there. Tyson's trip to tip after 30 million fight. Paris Fury, my life with the champ. Tycoon 55, my wild fling with Love Isle Meghan. Quackers, plastic ducks barred from charity race to save planet. You know, in 10 years or so time, we'll look back and think, how and why did we let these bunch of parasites destroy us as well as they have done? Why didn't we see it? Well, some of us can. Everyone listening to this can at least has an idea there's something going on that we need to do something about. But for those that have got no idea, they're going to go, how did we let it go? And that's because you were so self-interested, you thought that you were that clever, nobody could pull the wool over your eyes, you'd never get dumbed down by that because you're too intelligent. Well, guess what? Some of the most intelligent on the planet have been dumbed down by it and got away with it, but they're starting to realise what's going on now. That's why they're pushing their agenda faster and faster. The Mirror, if I haven't already said. World exclusives. Mo, I've nothing to hide on dope claim. Olympic hero breaks silence over dope. Carrie to go into labour. PM's lover expecting summer baby. And that takes you back to that first picture, which I'll just pop in here again, just so that you know what's going on. Express. Let's roll out some more scare tactics and bullshit, shall we? Apart from the fact you get £10 off when you spend 40 at Iceland. Coronavirus crisis. Government sets up war room to battle virus killer. This country will get through and beat it, promises PM. Oh, let's not forget, though, that recently the Cash Foundation put a device that you can create at home by yourself that wipes out the virus. And what did YouTube do? YouTube barred it because they said it breaches their terms and conditions. Yeah, if there's something that cures the coronavirus, YouTube will bar it. That should tell you that they are so fully connected with the global agenda of depopulation. We need to sort this bleeding mess out. Baby Dior for Boris and Carrie, and the happy couple are engaged too. And I wouldn't mind betting she either loses it or not long after she's had it she loses it, because he'll have to do a baby sacrifice to prove his loyalty to his bosses. Telegraph. Number 10 wedding and a boy too. Boris Johnson and Carrie Symonds to marry. Couple expecting child in summer. Bride-to-be says she feels incredibly blessed. And Prince Andrew said, thanks, Boris, mate. That'll take the pressure off me. They won't be looking at me anymore. Wrong again, Andy Pandy. The dirty Randy Andy who likes the girls so young. They're barely even teens. Retired doctors could help hospitals deal with coronavirus crisis. PM will not let independent UK be bound by abusive European human rights laws. Let's get rid of the human rights laws. Then we haven't got a right to survive. We haven't got a right to live. We haven't got a right to have food and a roof, which they've abused anyway, because we wouldn't have people on the streets if that human rights abuse wasn't already being abused by governments. And it makes no difference which one. They're all controlled at the top. You just see these faces like Johnson or the other one, the Labour one. They're just puppets. That the real controllers never change. Mandarins accuse Sedwell of going native as top civil servants quit in row with Patel. The fail. You can tell it's a propaganda piece because they're in every paper. Cribe says Boris and Carrie reveal she's pregnant. The exclusive inside story of their love. No, they were told, how can we make something to distract from Andy? You pretend that she's pregnant and you can lose it later. That's not a problem. And pretend you're going to get married and then you can cancel it later when she loses the kid. Okay, that's good. That should distract from Andy. Go for it. Number 10 brand senior Mandarin who quit over Priti Patel row, so calamity. Then major new Whitehall storm erupts. Leaked emails. Britain doesn't need farmers. Yeah, because if we can't grow our own food, we're at the beck of every other country that supplies it. See? More depopulation agenda shit. The Observer. Patel's future in doubt after Home Office chief resigns. Home Secretary behaved viciously. Rutnam will sue for unfair dismissal. From unflappable civil servant to Patel's biggest headache. Call up plan for Dad's army to fight virus. Kiss and tell distraction. Same picture, every paper. The Sunday Times. Home Office chief calls Patel a lying bully. Open warfare jeopardises Brexit migrant plan. What a good day to announce a number 10 baby. Work at home, the virus doomsday plan. And finally, what do you call a pony with a cough? A little horse. Falkirk dad releases cannabis ice cream and Scots can't get enough. Mr. Spliffy. What did one hat say to the other? You wait here, I'll go on ahead. I'm calling from my new Android smartphone. Yes, it even includes unlimited data. What do you call a magic dog? A labracadabrador. This is Greta. Greta is an angry little cunt. You have been warned. What did the shark say when he ate the clownfish? This tastes a little funny. Well, that's the last time I bite the Christmas lights. What's orange and sounds like a carrot? A parrot.